Welcome to a word of hope on this June 12th, Monday of the 10th week of Ordinary Time. I'm Brother Edward coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin. Today's Gospel, we read in St. Matthew's text the 8 Beatitudes that Jesus preaches on the Mount. If you're familiar with the Gospel of Luke, you know that there are only 4 Beatitudes in Luke's Gospel, which makes it an interesting contrast between the two. Pope St. Paul VI, reflecting upon the Beatitudes of Matthew, calls them the Beatitudes of solidarity. The reason he says this is that if we look at the first 4 Beatitudes, what we see is different conditions of human suffering among people: the poor, the weak, the meek who are marginalized, those who are suffering injustice. And all of these people represent human suffering. The second 4 Beatitudes we might call the friends of the poor and the weak and the suffering. It is their compassion that binds in solidarity the two groups. So we have those who are suffering, but those who are also comforting. And it's in this dynamic of caring and sharing that the kingdom of God is unfolding in history. And Jesus attaches a promise to each of those Beatitudes for those who suffer and who labor for the suffering. This solidarity which Pope Paul speaks about is that very compassion that makes us one with the other. And so there are times in our life that we might be suffering, and we long for those friends of the suffering to console us and strengthen us. And at other times, we are in a position where we can be that friend to those who suffer. A great example of this in recent history is Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati, who was a member of the Dominican laity, and he died when he was in his early 20s. He came from a rather affluent family in Torino, Italy, and he didn't really aspire to the ambitions of his family for him, but rather he was attracted to a deeper spiritual life and a solidarity and service of the poor. It was actually in his serving the poor that he contracts polio and dies in his early 20s. Pope Paul II called him the man of the Beatitudes because he personified so much of what Jesus was preaching in the Beatitudes in today's gospel. I would ask you sometime to think about these Beatitudes and how you live them out in your life. Think of them as 8 steps to holiness, 8 steps to heaven, 8 steps to building the kingdom of God on earth. So today, let us rejoice that the church has been blessed with people like Pier Giorgio Frassati as models and example, especially to youth, and find ways that we can personify the Beatitudes in our life with those who suffer.